Hello and very warm welcome to our Nextatlas webinar today. Today, Nextatlas webinar, we'll talk about the values of X and we'll explore Generation X in a different way from the usual, focusing on sub-communities, if we like to call them, of Generation X. It's going to be very exciting to look at it and discover new things about Generation X. I am Mario Coletti. I'm the managing director of Nextatlas. And together with me today, we have Samir.
Hi, I'm Samir Kadkade. I'm a trend researcher and data analyst here at Nextatlas.
And Samir will take us through the journey around the communities of Generation X. And will enlighten us about the opportunities that we have with this very specific target group. Just as a reminder, many of you already know about Nextatlas. Many of you are already subscribers and have a license of Nextatlas. But just to remind what we do, our platform enable our client to look at and predict the future that is relevant for their category, and is helping our client to build strategies and focus on product innovations, campaigns, and anything that can create a great customer experience with their target consumers. The way we deliver our technologies to our clients is through our platform or through our reports that can be downloaded and are available in different formats. But everything comes from our unique and proprietary AI technology that analyze big data from social networks and identify through the use of innovators and early adopters, which are the emerging trends and the key insights that we need to understand and apply to the strategies. We navigate across multiple platforms, from Instagram to Twitter to Pinterest and so on. And today, as I mentioned and anticipated, we will focus on Generation X in a new and unique way, introducing communities, the online communities that Nextatlas' new capability is going to be able to identify through social media. As this is a very new topic and is a great further enhancement of the capability of Nextatlas, you may have a lot of questions. So don't hesitate to add in the notes any questions you may have. And just as a reminder, you will be able later on to download the content and the report. We're also recording this session, so in case you want to go back later and look at part of the session, you can also do that. So, as I mentioned, through our technology and the analysis of social media data, and by identifying innovators and early adopters, we have now been able to look into trends in a different way. And we have actually identified how different online communities are looking into or are being influenced by trends in a different way. And by becoming specific on the analysis of online communities that we can identify through social media, brands can actually become more effective in targeting their relevant target groups. So the way that communities will work through Nextatlas will give us the opportunity to learn how products and brand are actually connected with consumers and how consumers will love their specific preferred brands. By using communities, we also have the opportunity to identify which one are the most relevant and important communities for the specific brand or category. And by doing that with us, this can be actually an opportunity to do it before your competitors. Again, through the use of communities, you can develop, and we can develop together, more in-depth and more precise marketing intelligence that can actually be translated in important business decisions. And everything about Nextatlas is about anticipating. And we focus on anticipations in the trends, the foresights, and of course, in the future of the targets that will be relevant for your business. So here we are introducing our new solutions, which not only identify and provide you foresight related to the future trends and the future relevant things that will impact consumers, but we are able to deep dive into specific different communities in different ways. And today we are bringing to you the example of how actually Generation X is a generation that has been, as Samir will explain, has been described in so many different ways in the past recent, and where that is a big focus from a business perspective. But the way we have identified and analyzed Generation X has given us the possibility not just only to see them as a broad, big target group, but identify that within Generation X, there are many different communities which behave in a very different ways. Today, Samir will take us through two specific communities of Generation X, the conscious optimist and the indulgent experimenter, and will explain what is driving them into their behaviors and into their choice of brands. And this will lead into what kind of tips can be relevant for you and for your business. So without further ado, I would like to hand over to Samir, and Samir will take us through this very exciting journey. And then at the end, we will open up to the Q&As, and we will give you access to the report and to more information. So Samir, is all yours, please.
Thanks, Mario. So to start, we actually wanted to not only give some profile to Generation X, but also explain specifically why they're important enough to warrant an entire dedicated webinar today. When we think about characterizing Generation X, one thing that really stands out is that they're often left out of the spotlight in favor of the generations on either side of them, so much so that they're actually often referred to as the forgotten middle child. And so there's this real strong opportunity to fill that void in communication. Thinking about the segment today, we're seeing that family, both their own kids and their parents, play a big role in their lives. And even more so, the changing conditions and challenges in their careers are of utmost importance to them. But most of all, and maybe the biggest reason that Generation X is today's focus, is that while they are relatively small and often forgotten, they do have some serious buying power. Several studies in the last year alone have shown that they actually have the highest spending per unit of any of the generations. And this combination of kind of a neglected audience with this supercharged potential offers a really, really cool, promising opportunity for brands to connect and fill a really big gap in the marketplace. So now that we kind of understand the importance of this segment, we can look at what's shaping their world. We've ID'd 4 emerging trends that are driving Generation X today, and we'll take a quick look at those before we get into the communities and the specifics of that. So first, we can look at their focus on the cost that they're bearing. Often the lifeblood of their family units, the cost of living crisis, especially under the specter of skyrocketing inflation rates, is undoubtedly shaping their conversations and especially their decisions in the marketplace. Next, consider their relationship to a work structure that has recently gone through quite a massive upheaval with all the remote working and the new conditions that have come to pass through the pandemic. And in traversing these new systems, there's naturally a lot of anxiety within Generation X about their role and about their comfort in this new status quo within a workforce that they've been part of for oftentimes up to 2 decades. In a similar vein, we're seeing the ethos of continued learning latching on to the wider Gen X community. As the community seeks out paths to upskilling, education, and just all around self-improvement. These conversations have been growing really loudly and show a really clear interest within the entire generation. And lastly, Gen X is taking a much larger interest in their love lives as conversations around midlife dating specifically are picking up, and they're exploring new attitudes and solutions for love. So while these 4 trends are quite pervasive throughout much of Gen X and provide a nice portrait of some of the bigger driving forces, it's crucial that brands avoid the pitfalls of treating this segment and this generation as a monolithic structure. Instead, as Mario spoke about earlier, we like to think of Gen X as a patchwork of several unique communities. And these communities may share motivations and drivers and interests, but they're each defined by a unique set of attitudes and behaviors and eccentricities. So to that end, we've applied our community framework to this Gen X segment and allowed our AI to identify a number of discrete communities with their own individual characterizations. Unfortunately, we don't have the time today to explore all of these communities, so we'll just be taking a quick peek into these first 2 on the top, the conscious optimist and the indulgent experimenter. Now, when we look at these 2 communities, it's helpful to just kind of get a broader sense of what defines them, where their perspectives are, and what their priorities are. And when we look at this at a high level, we see a pretty stark difference in perspective. The conscious optimist prioritizes building a healthy and sustainable future and lifestyle, not just for themselves, but for the wider world. And there's this real sense of an outward perspective and understanding what their impact and how they factor in to their wider ecosystem is. On the other side, we have the indulgent experimenter community, and that takes a much more inward-facing approach. They're interested in exploring avenues for self-modulation and improvement, and particularly they show an affinity to the technologies and innovations that can push them to new heights in those pursuits. Looking a little closer at the conscious optimist community, we can again see the importance of this strong eco-conscious value as a driver, not just for their behavior, but also for their choices in the marketplace. Particularly, we see these values resonate really strongly in the food and beauty sectors and in how this community interfaces with those industries. And from the top lifestyles and industries, you can see the focus on personal health and wellness is a really sweeping priority across the entire segment, across the entire community, and drives a lot of behaviors and priorities there. Turning then to the indulgent experimenter community, we can immediately see from these top 2 values that they virtually mirror the community's actual name, as this idea of narcissistic and self-centered experimentation is front and center for this group. Also, a persistent fascination with technology kind of helps shed light on the idea that innovation and modernity are really important as this community chases down paths and avenues to this experimental behavior. So what's really cool about these communities is not just understanding how their values align and diverge with each other, but actually seeing how these values inform their approach to some bigger umbrella concepts. For Gen X in particular, aging is a really huge point of conversation. And for us, it provides a really great opportunity to see how these 2 communities take a vastly different approach to the same basic topic. Kind of taking a survey of the conversations that are cropping up within these 2 communities as it relates to the aging concept, we again see a pretty stark divergence here in perspective. The conscious optimist community takes this kind of welcoming path to acceptance with aging, where the indulgent experimenter you can see is a little more combative and resistant to the natural aging process. And going down this conscious optimist route, you can see it's really about embracing the aging process in this positive and healthy way through exercise and natural supplementation. And overall, it's this idea of maintaining a really confident mindset as you go through the aging process. To that end, we're seeing that this mindset is pushing out the anti-aging paradigm that's been so ever present, especially in the beauty industry as it relates to aging, and instead is being replaced with this idea of well aging that accepts that beauty evolves through life and focuses on health and positivity and celebration of one's body as you continue to age. A really great example of this is the Look Forward project from Rock Skincare. So the skincare brand partnered with Sarah Jessica Parker on this project, and it celebrates the power of optimism specifically on long-term health and well-being. The project is anchored by the launch of an extensive online platform with research, insights, and advice from various subject experts on the tangible, real health benefits of optimism. The goal of the project is to inspire women to turn their focus away from anxiety about aging and towards a joy about living. On the other side of the coin, we see the indulgent experimenter, again, is a much more resistant community to this aging conversation. And you get this real sense of the experimentation angle when you look at so much discussion about treatments and procedures. And there's this real idea of tinkering and fine-tuning aesthetics to kind of fight back against the natural aging process. Of those treatments and procedures, one conversation that we've been seeing growing a lot is this idea of tweakments, which refers to kind of a class of minimally invasive medical procedures such as microneedling, lip fillers, and facelifts. And this kind of subset of procedure is becoming a really trusted solution for Gen Xers that are specifically trying to fight back and kind of buck the natural aging process, especially aesthetically. A really cool manifestation of this mindset is a recent partnership with John Lewis, a major department store in the United Kingdom, and the Cavendish Clinic, which is a London-based aesthetic treatment clinic. So these two have come together to create a series of microclinics in several John Lewis locations around the country. At these stations, shoppers can undergo skincare procedures, facials, and even some minor aesthetic treatments right in the store. And this project not only kind of underscores the growing interest among people around these types of treatments, but also the growing acceptance of these aesthetic tweaks among the wider public as people look for ways to fight back against the aging process. The other kind of umbrella topic that we wanted to look at here was the idea of learning and seeing how these two communities are mapping onto that larger conversation. Again, surveying the high-level conversations, we once again see a pretty strong distinction between these two communities. And this one in particular, I think, harkens back to something we spoke about with their very definition, is this idea of an outward versus inward perspective. In the conscious optimist, you see a lot of talk about teaching and mentoring and kind of giving this learning to others. Whereas with the indulgent experimenter, it's again a very inward approach, and it's about bettering yourself and learning new skills and just overall self-improvement. If we look a little closer into the conscious optimist, the thing that really jumps out is this idea of mentoring and teaching and sharing this wisdom and learning with someone else. In particular, we're seeing that Gen Xers are really actively thinking about how they can transfer their knowledge to younger generations specifically and help them grow and traverse the various career and life pitfalls that they may have to deal with. Mentoring programs and the like specifically have become really popular among Gen X as they've looked to fill this need. And a really cool example of this can be seen through the social audio app called Anyone. Recently, the subject of some big investments and buzz, the app allows business executives, entrepreneurs, and artists to set up their own profiles to speak with the public. Users are able to pay for 5-minute increments of one-on-one time with any of these industry leaders where they can pick their brains, ask questions, and seek out valuable life and business lessons. And for the executives on the platform, it gives them a really simple and concise format to dole out their wisdom to the next generation. Looking then at the indulgent experimenter, as we spoke about before, it's very much about self-improvement, about learning new skills and finding avenues to be more productive in the workforce. Specifically, this idea of upskilling and reskilling has been extremely relevant among the Gen X community. And so much so that we're now seeing people proactively seeking out new technologies and platforms and services that can allow them to explore new skills or even revamp skills that may have fallen away from them. Digital Restart is a pilot project from Intesa Sanpaolo's private banking arm, Figuram. The project offers a full master's degree program in data analysis that is specifically targeted to people over 40 years old that are looking to enhance, renew, and modernize their digital skill set. Even more, the program is offering 75 full ride scholarships to passionate adults with the goal of training professionals that can manage today's enterprise data systems. So that's a small taste of what we found digging into these two communities. As Mario mentioned at the top, we do have a full report where we cover a couple more of these umbrella topics and how they relate to each of these communities. And we'll share details about how you can dig into that at the end of this presentation. But what I hope is now a little more apparent is that this generation is a deeply unique audience, and their value is something that brands need to take very seriously. So before we end, we'd like to give you a few tips to chew on for how brands can connect better with Gen X going forward. First and foremost, we talked about this generation being left by the wayside so often, and it's imperative that brands actively reach out specifically to its audience, make a concerted effort to understand their needs and wants, and really make them feel very seen. Next, Gen X is not as resistant to change as some might think. Instead, we're seeing that they're actually very willing and eager to seek out paths to things such as self-improvement, and they'll enthusiastically buy into these efforts that help them along that path. We also saw that they have little regard for a lot of traditional stigmas. So brands would do well to adopt more open and considerate approaches to topics like aging, fitness, and wellness that have so long been mired in these kind of black marks. And finally, Gen X is looking to make a difference. So encouraging and fostering their ability to share wisdom and make a real positive impact and be valuable contributors to the future is really resonant and will go a long ways. Because as we've seen, this is a super valuable segment, and they're definitely ready for some creative and thoughtful solutions in the market. So that about does it for us today. I will now pass it back to Mario, and we can get into the question and answer session.
Thank you, Samir. That's amazing, very insightful, and yeah, it is quite clear how much actually we have been talking about Gen X in a kind of general way, and in reality, the Gen X group can actually be sliced in various different communities, significantly more specific in their behavior, their concerns, their drivers, their pain points, and their motivations. And this can be very, very useful and helpful to create and develop targets. So we have a number of questions for today, and so I will go through them one by one. One is actually from Mohammed, and Mohammed was actually curious to see and understand if there are any areas where both communities have the same needs. So could you consider to actually bring those communities together and target them at the same time?
Yeah, it's a really
go ahead.
It's a really great question. So we kind of purposefully looked at two rather antagonistic communities just to really highlight how different some of these communities that may seem very similar on the surface actually regard things very differently. But yeah, in truth, there is a lot of overlap between the various communities that we've identified across the generation. And they do share a handful of interests and passions. Again, as we mentioned, there is a little bit more even to just these two communities that you can access in a report, and even more. But I think that hopefully will show a little bit more that there is a strong overlap even between some communities that may seem quite antagonistic. There's always a common ground that we can find.
And actually, this is a great segue to the next question. This question is from Catherine, and Catherine is asking if we need, or we had to obviously focus and target to Generation X as a main target group. Should we target only one community, and should we choose the community one by one? Or is there a way to actually combine and target multiple sub-communities of the Generation X? I think it's quite similar to Mohammed's question, but we can actually give a different angle to the question.
Sure. Yeah, I think there's a little bit more nuance when you talk about actually implementing these communities into your actual strategies and rollouts, right? So obviously, speaking one-to-one or speaking directly to a community is going to be a lot more resonant and effective to speaking to Generation X as a monolith, as we discussed. But just because you're kind of communicating through a community profile, I don't think that by any means you're restricted to only speaking to that community. Since these communities share so much overlap, whether it's interests or concerns, various communities are both keyed into sustainability, but they may diverge greatly in other aspects. So there's always a way to find kind of a shared passion. And that way, you're not only speaking to that one community, you're kind of speaking to this amalgamated segment and audience that is going to be much broader, but you're still going to have that benefit of a very specific and targeted message to that audience.
Thanks, Samir. Conscious of time, there is one more question I will answer quickly. It's from Maria, and she is asking at Nextatlas, how do you choose the community to analyze in order to develop the insights that you presented today? And can you actually analyze communities from a brief of a client? So the quick answer to that is indeed, we choose the Generation X communities here because they have a general or can be of general interest to many of our clients. But absolutely, we can pick up and collect and get a brief from a client to analyze vertically into one of the client specific categories and see what communities exist within that specific category and brand that can be really relevant. So please don't hesitate to drop us a note, send us a brief, and then we can obviously discuss more about the communities that are specific to your business. I would close here the Q&A session. There is a little bit more to say, and so really, what can you do now? You can get the full report by clicking on the QR code that you see on the slide here. or you can get a demo from us in terms of how does Nextatlas works. Again, clicking on the QR code. And you can actually do that now, or you will be able to do it once you will actually get a follow-up email, or you will get the full report eventually. So we are looking forward to speaking with you again, and we would like to thank you for the attention and the presence today. I would like to thank Samir for the great job and the great presentation. And for now, have a nice evening, rest of the day. Thanks for joining, and we look forward to seeing you the next time at the next webinar. Stay in touch and keep safe and well. Thank you, Samir. Thank you, everyone.
Guys. Bye.
Bye.